Before we get to the episode today, I want to thank our sponsor, Surf Prep Sanding. Whether you're looking for the highest quality of sanders, dust extractors, or abrasives, Surf Prep has what you need to take your project to the next level. I've been using Surf Prep for a couple of years now and know firsthand the quality of their products. The amazing family who stands behind their brand is by far the best in the industry. Use code MAKERLOUNGE, all one word, for 10% off your order at surfprepsanding.com. Thank you to Surf Prep and our patrons for sponsoring this episode. As always, I will give a shout out to all of those top tier patrons at the end of the episode. If you want to be part of the Maker Lounge podcast community, head over to patreon.com/MakerLoungePodcast. Welcome to the lounge. I'm Matt with Voltner Woodworking and your host of the Maker Lounge podcast, where every Friday we have a rotating group of makers hanging out and talking shop with each other. In 2017, he turned in his nose to his corporate job and pursued his dream to go full-time, inspiring others to build things with their hands. From product reviews and shop organization to building a jail cell for his son's phone to stop him from seeing his latest video. He's a familiar face in the maker community. His channel name is something I hear on a regular basis around my old house. Fix this, build that. With over 3 million followers and subscribers on social media, Brad Rodriguez with Fix This, Build That is here in the lounge.
What's up, Matt? How you doing, buddy?
Good. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's do this. I would say I'm a little rusty. On the old podcasting scene.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has.
You used to have your own podcast. And
yeah.
How many episodes did you do?
Yeah, I think it was 126.
Dang.
Yeah,
so
over the course of 2.5 years or so. Yeah, a few here and there.
Did you do all the editing?
For a while, and then we offloaded that once we, were generating some money with the sponsors, and then then COVID hit and that dried up, and then the podcast dried up with it. So it's like I'm not going back to editing.
Right. Well, and you have an editor for your main stuff now too, right? 'Cause you're cranking out a lot.
Yeah. Actually, we just had his 2-year anniversary.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like last week.
That's great. Yeah, eventually I think I'm going to turn over the editing part of this because, if you record for an hour long podcast, you might spend 2-3 hours just trying to sweeten it up. And I do video and stuff. Did you guys do video?
We never did. We talked about it, but we decided, like, we were talking about it, and then that's, we were like, all right, let's go all in or all out.
Yeah.
We went the all out alternative.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was editing, and I don't know if you do this or not. If you edit at 2x speed, that's the pro tip right there. Yeah.
I try to edit like looking at the audio spikes and stuff.
Yeah.
And then try to at least get the first run on it, but it's still, you want to sweeten up the audio and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. No, we were pretty lazy about it. I was like, have my little macros or whatever. I'm like, yep, the compression, raise it up, noise cancellation, send it.
Yeah. Well,
we weren't out there like editing out ums and uhs or breaths like some people do. So yeah.
Oh, there's plenty of ums and ahs in mine.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. We all do it.
Yeah. Unless it's like a really long, awkward pause. Then it's like, okay. Yeah, I think I'll trim that one out. But now they have like audio things like AI is doing for you.
Oh, absolutely. Just chat GPT it, AI, Midjourney it, whatever, Dolly, all of them. Just throw them all together and you'll have a great, you don't even have to record the podcast episode. Just say, record a podcast with Brad Rodriguez from Fix This, Build That in the style of, and you'd probably be fine. Yeah,
if I could get a couple audio samples from you, then I can do that. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess it's crazy. I don't want to go down this route. I do want to get your origin story, but yeah, it is crazy to see some of these celebrities who are like, that wasn't my recording, or that's not my voice, and people are stealing their stuff.
Yeah, like Drippy Pope. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
I saw another one that Marquez Brownlee put out, and it was like a Jay-Z song, but it wasn't Jay-Z. It sounded just like him. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're in like a whole new world, man. It's like I really think that AI is gonna change a lot. So I don't know if it's gonna change everything, but it is. It's like then It's the new internet. It's basically what crypto was supposed to be, you know, like Web3, all that good stuff. It's like, no, AI is actually going to do something positive and change things. But, you know, it's going to be a huge disruptor. I mean, it already is.
Yeah. I had Adam Bennett with Adam of No Trades, actually from your hometown.
Yeah.
I had him on last week, and we nerded out a lot on AI.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's just crazy to think about all the different stuff, and we're just at the beginning phases. I mean, it just came out a few months ago, 6 months ago. I mean, it's been around, but still, just I'm sure you use a little bit of that in your like building your content and stuff like that to refine anything.
We've done a little bit. The thing I use it most for is or I've been using it for what was I using for? I was using it for name generation.
Oh yeah.
For we've been talking about doing a few different things, which I'm sure we'll get to, but I want to have like, you know, for like brand name or just for like coming up with like new names for a product or for a brand or for a new channel. And you could just say like, yo, give me the, and they'd be like, all right, give me 25 more. Like, you just keep saying 25 more, 25. And it's just like, it just like spits out. It's like, holy crap. This thing can just put so much out there. We've not done, cause we do have a big blog side too.
Right.
But, you know, like I know there are some people where you can just say like, hey, write me a 500 word blog about, you know, how to read a tape measure or something.
Right.
And it would do it. But, you know, that's going to be a really interesting part because there's a lot of fear out there about like what's going to happen to like the blogs out there and how they're going to change. Cause now you don't know who's writing them. You don't know if it's like a robot or it's like an actual person who knows what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, we didn't want to go down that route because we heard from some of our, you know, like confidants or whatever who are like good in SEO. They're like, yeah, do not do that because Google's smart enough where they're going to figure out what's AI written and what's not, and then they're going to like ding you for it. So we've used it a bit, and I want to use more of like Midjourney, which is the visual
design
part of it, the design. I want to use a little bit more of that, but I haven't dabbled into it for work a lot. I use it actually that's not true. The where I used it the most was in the jail cell. I use it for coding. It's
true.
Wonderful for coding.
Yeah.
It can't write the whole thing for you, which I tried to do. I was like, yo, write me this thing that is like, it messes everything up. But what it's really good for is if you're trying to code something and you don't know what like a certain syntax means, or you can like grab a short snippet and be like, what does this do? And it'll say, oh, well, this calls this function and this, you know, variable, and it'll list it out for you. So it's really good for if you do any type of coding work.
Right.
That's probably the thing it's best at in my, you know, limited usage of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost could replace Google search at this point. Like you could
I love it because that's what it does. Because what, you know what happens, right? So if you go and you search what's the best wood for a cutting board, if you do it on Google, you're going to get 10 results, which now they have the forever scrolling feed, which is great. But you know, and you're gonna have to click into them, and one of them is gonna be like Spruce Crafts or something. You know, it's like 10 roundups of the best cutting boards ever made, and all this stuff. And so you're clicking there and like hoping that one of them is the right one. Yeah. If you type that into Chat GPT, I've never done it, but my assumption would be it's gonna list out like it's gonna tell you a little bit about making a cutting board, then it's gonna tell you exactly the answer and why. Right. And so it gives you answers instead of resources. Yeah. Right. And that's a huge difference. So I 100% think that is the future of search is like, it's going to give you an answer versus like, oh, go read all these blog posts and maybe you'll find it in there. Right.
I wonder how that plays into how Google is tied in with YouTube and how that will affect search on YouTube.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's a great idea. I wonder if like, oh man, what if it like started snipping videos? Right. What if you were like, hey, show me like the five, like what are the 5 best ways to make a cutting board? And then it like came back and it's like, and it's like pulled out clips from 5 different channels, you know, that like seams them together. Ooh,
well, and then you start paying like a subscription to show up in the top 5.
Oh, it's all about money. It all goes back
to
money.
It's all back to money.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like with Meta and them now charging for the
verification,
the check mark.
Yeah. Twitter,
everything
all
comes
of them.
back to money. I guess
That's
they blew their wad on all
the
those
Reels
bonuses. You're like, how can we recoup this back? They probably had somebody new come in and say, wait a minute, you guys are doing this wrong. You're giving money. You're supposed to be taking money.
That's right. That is right.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about some of that stuff, but like for someone who's been under a rock and doesn't know who you are, maybe give a little bit of your background on how you got started. So I mentioned in 2017, but I think it probably goes back further than that.
Yeah, it goes back way further than that. I think it was 2001, I believe. I took a woodworking class over at a local woodcraft in Cincinnati. I was living up in Cincinnati, doing engineering work up there, and I moved up from Nashville up to Cincinnati, and I was working for GE Aircraft, and I wanted to like build some stuff, and so I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then I built like a serving tray. It was like my first project ever, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then I just started like acquiring a bunch of tools, and I was like, man, woodworking is awesome.
Yeah.
And I had bought an old house that was it was a 1907 build, I think. And so I was fixing up the house. I was doing a lot of DIY stuff. And then I realized like, it was 2002 and I took that course because I'd already done a lot of the DIY stuff. And I was like, just getting into it. And I was like, man, this is awesome. And so I was just kind of on and off woodworker. And then in 2013, so like fast forward way up, I built out a small little shop, a little table saw and a dust collector, joiner, planer.
Yeah.
We moved back down. I got married. We moved back down to Nashville where I grew up for a different job. And then I found Instagram and I was like, ooh, this is, at first I just thought it was like I thought it was like VSCO, like a picture editing app.
Yeah.
And then one of my friends I was working with, she was into fitness and she had like 35,000 followers. And I was like, what? I was like, this is insane. Like, what is this?
Those are huge numbers back then for sure.
Oh yeah. This is 2013. Yeah. And so I was like, I don't know. So I jumped on there and I found this like small woodworking community. And so I just started sharing my stuff because I just moved back to Nashville. Like all the people I'd done woodworking with in Cincinnati were not around. So I was sharing with, internet strangers like we do.
Yeah.
And then the ball started rolling. And one day I posted it was actually the very first flip top tool stand I had built. And I had a rigid planer on one side and a rigid spindle sander on the other side. And I did a picture of it because there was no video back then. Nothing, just a picture.
Not even carousel at that point, right?
No. Oh, gosh, no. Nothing.
Yeah.
And Rigid sent me a note. They're like, we love that. Can we send you a compressor? And I was like, absolutely. I like free.
Yeah.
Free 99 is my favorite price. So they sent, and then that was the moment where I was like, oh, like there's this marketing piece and like brands want to see their products being used. And then, fast forward like another year or so. And then I got the first person that wanted to pay me for a blog post. So in 2015, I had started the blog, got paid $200 to do a blog post. And I was like, oh man, there's something here. Yeah. And so that's when, then I just started going. Like that was when we locked it in. I was like, I want to try to do this full time. So I kind of, from there until 2017, so about 2015, I was just like burning the candle at both ends of the stick, man. I'd work in the shop from 9 till midnight or 1 a.m. every day during the week after I got home from work and put the kids down. And then every weekend and just grew the channel, started doing YouTube in 2016. And it just like kept snowballing and then went full time in 2017 and been doing content full time ever since. So coming up actually 6 years in August.
And now they're like, can I pay you $200 for a blog post? You're like, talk to my agent.
Yes, actually, an agent is a wonderful thing. Yeah, I was just like, I took a very long time till I got an agent. I think the first agent I got was in 2020.
Yeah.
So I was negotiating everything myself.
Right.
And
it's a huge
which
time
is great.
suck.
It is, but it is like when you just start getting, and the larger your channel gets and the more platforms you're on and the more ways people have to reach you. And then you have all like the Amazon resellers, and it was just like getting inundated with, 95% junk.
Right.
And I'm like trying to weed through all of them. And then like somebody good, then like, Benjamin Moore or something. I'm like, ooh, yeah.
Right.
Talk back and forth. And so, paying an agent, I never wanted to pay them because, I'm cheap. And I'm
You're
like, I don't want them taking my money.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, they would do this better than me. So
yeah, it's like editors. So
yes,
tell me
exactly.
how many contour gauges did you get?
I didn't do any of those. I did buy one.
Yeah.
Or the what is it? The angle finder, the 4-sided angle finder.
Right. Yeah, those are a dime a dozen.
Yeah, so I was established enough by that point that I was like, I don't want any of this stuff. Because they were like, oh yeah, we'll give you a free thing, and $50 if you do a 20-minute YouTube video. And I'm like,
yeah,
why don't we skip on that one?
Right. Yeah. Now for the beginner or somebody who's like in the up and coming stage, that is a great gig. If you can get a contour gauge, you're super happy about it, and they'll find those people. And then you'll get another request the next month, and then it'll look exactly the same as the other brand.
Right, exactly. It's got a little bit different name, and it's a different color. But it's actually an interesting thing as you say that, because what happens for every content creator, I hate the word influencer, but for every content creator who grows and succeeds, is that at some point you're not doing anything right. Most people that I've seen kind of, or at least in the past, I guess it's a little bit different now because of the culture, but most people stumbled into it. They saw it and they just started doing it, and it was like, it just kind of came. Now obviously people are like, yeah, I want to do that. And this is like an escape from my job or whatever. But at some point it turns from like when I was telling you, you get that tool or you get that offer from somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, yes, like I will post 5 posts for this. This is amazing. Right. Like if you can give me a hand plane or a drill or whatever, or an angle finder.
Yeah.
But then at some point as you grow, you become worth more to them than they are worth to you. Right. And that's like the inflection point. That's the tipping point, is like when you start holding the cards. And when you can say, well, yeah, I'll need $500 for that, or I'll need $1,000 for that, or they offer you that $200 and you're like, yeah, that's not going to be worth my time, but can you do $750 or like whatever, so it's like, as you grow, it's really interesting. And the funny part is that the brands get into this interesting thing where they're like, okay, do we want to grow with people? And pay them more, and as they grow and get more of an audience and a larger reach, do we pay them more so we can reach those, or do we keep with like the quote unquote micro influencers who are just going to do everything for free product?
Right.
And I've always been fascinated with that, of like watching the brands and how the different brands work with content creators, and how they like who they have using their product, and like, do they, some people, they just like send anybody anything, but they don't want to ever pay anybody.
Right.
And other people are like super tight, and then they have like big budgets for a few different people, and there's people in the middle. That's always really interesting to me, to see how those brands go to market and how they try to work within the content creator, ecosystem.
Well, and people would be surprised too how many of the big name brands are run by people who are content creators. Big names in, like we've had Adam with Lazy Guy DIY, Rachel, she's now with LaCursi. Like there are people who are running the social media part of it.
Yes.
That are people just like me, and you're talking to these brands thinking you're talking to some, someone high up or whatever. And so you can't fool these brands into thinking you're somebody you're not, because a lot of them are run by people who are doing this on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's an interesting new thing that's popped up in the last few years, but very prevalent in like small, not necessarily ma and pa stuff, but small brands that who aren't like a huge tool manufacturer or something. That's like, there's so many of those in the woodworking space. They're all like, just thinking like the, desktop or like even like wall control, those guys that they're just like smaller businesses. And so they don't, like, for them, it makes more sense to partner up with somebody who's already doing it, because they don't have a huge marketing team you know, that has all this experience, or they don't want to hire an agency per se, and they bring somebody in-house. The same thing with Tools Today, with Matt Plumley. He was actually one of the first, if not the first, that I can remember. That was many years ago. When he started working with Tools Today.
Yeah, he had a channel like Got Wood or Wood something.
Got One. Yeah. He was an OG. He was back in the day. He was one of the OG Instagram guys that he started pretty early on. I remember having conversations with him.
Yeah, it was like, man, this guy's living the dream. Like, he's going to go work for a brand. That's awesome. And now it's, you know, commonplace, I think, to have people doing a lot of that stuff. Like Morgan Hop. You know.
Yep, I was just talking to Morgan. He's just went over to Onefinity.
Yeah. And so he was just on the podcast also.
Oh, nice.
Great conversation. And I love talking about behind the brand stuff a lot. Because it's people who are listening to this podcast and other podcasts and are posting regularly on a day-to-day basis. I mean, a good majority of them are looking to do what you did, and that is to go full-time at some point.
Right.
And so,
I guess I didn't really say that. Yeah. Did we? I kind of glossed over that whole part in the origin story, but yeah. That's what I did. Yeah, that was. Oh man, dude. Like I have such a heart for the guy and the gal trying to make it and trying to like break free from you know the corporate gig or you know whatever it is, that just the 9 to 5. Like, it's a hard path, and like you got to put in so much effort on the front end. And what I always tell people is that you feel like you're treading water, right? But it's like you're putting in those little pieces, and you're getting better every video, every post, every week. And then you get more people following, you're figuring out the systems, and you're starting to understand what it is. And then again, it's you know, it's always, everything happens. It's like, you know, the days are slow and the years are fast type thing, right? It's like you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, like, wait, you know, I was just looking at something the other day and they're like, oh yeah, the 3rd anniversary of the pandemic. And I was like, holy crap, man, that's true. Like, it's been 3 years. But, you know, what happens is that, speaking of 3 years, is I've seen it so many times that, like, if somebody really puts their mind to it, it's like the first year you have no idea what you're doing, right? You're making all the mistakes. You're trying to figure it out. You're figuring out who's who, how to do things, the systems, all that. Second year, you've got, you know, you kind of know what you're doing, but you're still trying to hit your stride. And that's when you start seeing a little bit of momentum. And then the 3rd year is where, like, you're in it, you're going, and like you can really start executing because you've got all these things fine-tuned, and now you're just working on the content versus all the systems and things around it. You've got all that down. And then I've just seen it so many times. It's like people become quote unquote overnight success in 3 years. It's like a magical number, man. It's like it's like that 3rd year is just like something happens. I mean, there's so many of my buddies who are full-time content creators. It's like the same story. It's like from when they started going after the dream. So for all you folks out there who are trying to go at it, you know that it is a struggle. And that's why that's probably the best case, not the absolute best case, obviously, but like in general, that's like what I see as like people who are doing it well. And then, you know, sometimes people are just in that salt mine banging away for 5-7 years and just can't ever get it to click. So
seeing that plateau, that can be frustrating. What would you say would be your the thing that propelled your growth, essentially? Like, I know it's gonna be different for everybody, but like, you know, there are people who have been hitting the grind every day and just not seeing that growth. Is it tailoring your content to a specific, because you do fix this, build that? I mean, it's pretty much everything, right? Right.
Yeah, there's so much, you know, I mean, obviously that's I could write a book on that. Maybe I should someday.
Yeah.
But
have AI do it.
Yeah, there you go. I think that it's obviously different for everybody. It depends on how you're going after it. So I'm like a very analytical and technical guy. And I like to understand how things work. And when I find something, I just like grab it by the throat and strangle it until, you know, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was figuring out, like watching, and it's always like the way, and people say this for, you know, basically everything, but for sure for content creation, is to look at the people who have gone before you, right? And like see what's successful for them, and then see what you like, see what you don't like. It's like when you're trying to like find your voice and say like, who am I going to be? Like most people, you know, the vast majority of people don't like go in and be like, oh, I've got this great idea. You know, I'm going to be the mime woodworker. By the way, someone should do that. That'd be great. Right? They're like, this is going to be it. That's going to be my shtick. And I'm just going to I'm just going to mime everything, you know?
Yeah. Maybe that'll help my channel.
And right? And most people are just like, okay, I want to build stuff. I like building stuff. I want to teach people. And, you know, I like this certain type of woodworking, this style, you know, and it's like that. And so being able to look at other content creators and be like, oh, I really love how he works with music. And I really love how she does voiceovers. And I really like the style, you know, the cinematic style of this guy. And taking all those pieces and parts of it and pulling it together into your own style. So that was a huge thing, is like watching trends, watching what's working for other people, and then figuring out how I could do that in my way. And then figuring out also like what worked on the platform. So that was one thing I've always been really good at, and why we do have 3 million, because it's not like we have 3 million people on YouTube, right? We've got large audiences across a lot of different social media, because that's one thing I'm good at, is like I know how to like find things that work, and then I just double down. That's like a huge motto of mine, is just like double down. Like once you find that thing that works, you just go with it until it doesn't work anymore. So that was really what spurred on our growth so much, was like figuring out our voice by looking at what's working, and then finding our path in there in you know, the world of woodworking content creators and DIY, which is so much bigger now. And so it's so much harder to carve out a niche. But back then, it was, you know, it was definitely a bit easier, but it was still like, you know, we always thought like, oh, and it's like Bob Clagga, Jay Bates, Mark Spagnolo, and all these dudes. I was like, oh, I'll never be like those guys are.
Yeah. Something that the listener may have missed, but I picked up on, is that you said our. You know, you are the face of the channel, but you work with other people, and I think that speaks well to your character. That I'm just picking up in the few minutes we've been talking, and then, you know, we chatted at Workbench Con briefly. You are you know, you put it out there, and you have an honest approach to everything, and you know, your humility shows through. So kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's because and we are a very small team, but we still are a team, and it's always, you know, so like my wife, so when I quit in 2017, we did the old tag team. So she was staying home with the kids, and that was the way that we worked that out. And just a short insight into that is that so one thing we did was we wanted to eliminate as many expenses as we could. Right. So like make the risk very low.
Employ the kids.
Exactly. So we worked our kids full time. So my wife was a teacher in Ohio, and then when we had our first kid, she stayed home with the kids. I had a good paying job in engineering, so you know, she stayed home, and I did the work thing. And then when we moved back down here, we'd already had all of our kids, and our youngest was going to be going into kindergarten in 2017. And so that, it all worked out really nicely in that. It was like, okay, I'll quit. And then you go back to work teaching. So we have insurance, and we have a paltry teacher salary.
Yeah. My wife's a teacher, so I know.
Oh gosh, it was so bad.
Yeah.
But so that she could be there to like have a salary that would cover our expenses. So we got everything. We actually were able to get debt free, which was awesome.
That's great.
So when we did that, I left the workforce. She went back in, And so even if the channel had failed, but at this point I knew it wasn't going to fail. Like I'd already replaced a lot of my income through the channel, and that's why I felt comfortable doing it. But even if it had failed, that we could have gotten by easily on her salary because we just didn't have any expenses. I mean, we just had the daily expenses. We didn't have any debt. We didn't have any, we didn't have the mortgage payment. We didn't have the car payment. We didn't have the student loans, credit card loans. And there's so much power in that, man.
Right.
I mean, that would be like my biggest thing for anybody trying to leave their day job is like eliminating debt. And I know like we were very fortunate to be able to actually pay off our house as well. I made money flipping houses, not flipping houses, but like I had sold a few houses along the way that we had built up equity along the way, which was great. And so we were able to roll over and just do all that. But even if, like most people are probably not gonna be able to pay off their mortgage, but like getting rid of all that, the like high, there's like 17% student loans or car loans or whatever, because the more you can set yourself up for success or the best way to set yourself up for success is to eliminate possibilities for failure.
Right.
And like the biggest failure point for people going out on their own is money, right? And they can't make it. And so like being able to have 6 to 12 months of living expenses saved up before you go out. I mean, it gives you so much cushion, and it gives you that ability so that you're not like looking behind your back the whole time, that you can like just focus on what you're trying to do, focus on the content, focus on the job, whatever it is. Same thing for people who are trying to be full-time woodworkers without content. Same thing. Yeah.
I could tell that you're a lot like me in that regard, because I'm a planner. When I talk to people who I had a conversation just this week, and I was talking to somebody, and he's like, I was driving home from work, and I was just like, oh man, what a day. And he's like, so quit. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, this is not gonna work out. I got to have the 6 to 12 months prepared and be out of debt.
Yeah. And then that'd definitely be on the more conservative side. I think that if you had, again, I think it's like people always, that's a big question. It's like, when did you know it was the right time? And you'll never know it's the right time. That is one thing for sure. You always feel like, ooh, this, but what if I just, or this? So it's never going to feel like the right time. I mean, unless you like get laid off or something like that,
Right.
Like there are some things, but in the most part, if no big life changes are happening, it's never going to be the right time. There's always something else that's going to pull you away, and you do have to make that decision. But like having some of those guardrails, or at least like goals to be like, all right, I want to, and that was what we did, is we were like, okay, we want to have all these things paid off. And also I want to know that it's viable. I want to be making, a certain percentage of what my day job is making, so that I'll know, and I want it to be growing. And so, as we hit those and check those off, I was like, okay, cool. Like, this is, like, this might not be great. I might not turn into the next Mr. Beast, but like, we're going to be good. And this might be tough.
I'm giving away an entire shop.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, video idea.
I'd say get somebody to sponsor that.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of having that comfort, stepping into something. That's probably the biggest barrier.
Yeah, it is, and you'll never be fully comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. So, and you shouldn't be. You shouldn't. I mean, I think that's also part of what helps drive you and makes you sharp, is that there's some risk on the line, right? And you work a lot harder when like, oh, and that's the one thing I love about working for myself. And my dad always used to tell me, he says, you eat what you kill. And when you're working for yourself, because most people who are working a day job, you get paid the same thing, no matter like if you had a crappy day or a great day, right? And that was one of the huge things that turned me off about corporate America, is like the top performer would get, a 3.6% raise, and the bottom performer would get a 2.8% raise. Not like, how, like, this is, something's not working here. Like this girl like saved the company $10 million, and this dude, cost the company, his full salary last year because he didn't get anything done. Plus he screwed some other things up.
Yeah.
And so that's, something that and it's a double-edged sword though,
Mm-hmm.
because there's nobody telling you when to punch that clock. There's nobody
Right.
telling you when to stop. So if you're like a workhorse, like
Yeah.
I have been known to be, like, that's the biggest thing that I struggle with, is just like still balancing how much time I want to put into the job, and then having that time for the family. And I,
Right.
The whole, like, someone was like, work-life balance doesn't exist. And I was like, what? But I kind of agree with them, because basically it's like there is no balance. Like,
Right.
you're either all work, or you should be all work. Like, when you're working, you're working.
Yeah.
And with your family, you're with your family. When you're trying to balance the two of them together, and you're kind of half pregnant, that's when it sucks. And I'm really good at that. Because with my office being at my house, and so it's
that's probably another challenge is knowing. You probably invested more time your first year than, like, you probably thought, oh, I'll clock out at 4 or 5, but you're probably still just hitting the grind.
Oh yeah. My first year, I was so productive. That was as productive as I've ever been. I always think about it. Actually, the most productive I've ever been is like when I was working that 9 to midnight, because I knew like, this is all the time I've got, and I would just plow through.
Yeah.
And it's also, there's a beauty to being in that small growth mode. Like, you're not fielding all these sponsorship emails. You're not working on your website. You're not reviewing analytics. Like, you're just building that project and just trying to put it out there, right? You're so focused. Whereas as you grow naturally, and as you get on more social media platforms, and as you get more clients and all those things, it's just like, who was it, Jay-Z or somebody? Mo money, mo problems. Like, that's Puffy. Sean, that's P Diddy. Yeah,
P Diddy.
Yeah, mo money, mo problems. That is 1,000% true.
Yeah. Well, and when you started, you mentioned you had the blog, and you were diversifying your portfolio. Essentially, you weren't relying on AdSense or anything like that at that point, right?
Right. Yeah, it was mainly, it was almost all sponsors in the beginning. And then I was doing, what was it back then? It was like Google, man, that was a huge pain in the butt. Doing like Google AdSense, like actual AdSense on my blog, on the website. And then Amazon had one that they've since sunset, like a long time ago. And then some, I can't remember what they all were, but you had to like do this whole like waterfall stack, because they didn't guarantee that they would fill all your ad spots, because you think about it like a web page, they're serving so many ads, right? It's not like YouTube. Every page you click on, it can serve 5 ads or something. And so some of these systems, they were set up that like their fill rate might have only been 90%, and you're like, well, I want to optimize it, I want an ad 100% of the time. And so you had to waterfall these ads. So you had to set up the Google, and then set it up so there's like, oh, hey, Google, if you can't fill this, then Amazon, you fill it. And Amazon, if you can't fill it, then Mediavine or whoever, I don't remember these places, but oh God, just like, I hadn't thought about that in ages. But yeah, and you have to set it all up, and like
scratch the wound there.
I know, geez.
Flashbacks.
Put it in the sidebar and everything. So yeah, I was definitely trying to to diversify. But in the beginning, it was all sponsor stuff, because it's just like, it's so hard to make money off of AdSense or even like product sales, stuff like that, in the beginning. And so it's like the sponsor money was basically the lion's share of it back then. And then after that, that's when the plan sales and the affiliates and those things, really started helping.
Yeah. How does the plan sales and stuff fit into the portfolio? Is it a good percentage of the portfolio?
Yeah, it is. It goes, it ebbs and flows. I felt really bad because my wife and I always talk about it. It was like, less and less now, as it becomes not a thing anymore. But when COVID hit, COVID was great for us.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's like, businesses are shuttering and stuff. Like, COVID for the woodworkers was awesome because everybody was home,
right?
And everybody wanted to build stuff. And so, man, we sold so many plans in 2020. It was crazy. And then, a little bit less. So we've been actually declining since 2020. But, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, it's a good portion of the business. And 2020 was a really good portion of the business. And as, things fall off and different, it's just, it ebbs and flows, obviously.
Yeah.
Depending on the season as well and what's going on. Because like 2022 was really, this last year was pretty bad in like the end of 21 because like everybody that had not been traveling for so long because of COVID.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Everybody just boom, like everybody's taking all those trips that they wanted to take.
Right.
So like, I feel like woodworking in general took a big lull in like late 21 and all of 22. And I feel like it's kind of coming back now, but yeah, plans, and we're working on courses right now actually as well. So that's like, I love digital products because that was the thing that turned me on to content creation in the first place. Is like, I used to sell cutting boards and I was like, I'd make, 10 cutting boards and I'd sell them. And then I'd be like, okay.
Right.
Okay. I had the money in my hand, and then it's like, all right, well, yeah, like I said, you eat what you kill. You got to go make it. If you want another
10 more cutting boards
$1 in your pocket, you better get out there.
Yeah.
Versus
and then you got to ship
plans.
them out and worry about all that. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. And then you got the people calling you back for money you've already made. Like, nope, don't want that. And so digital products or AdSense, same thing, or affiliate, those are all things that are racking up money while I'm sleeping. And I was like, huh. Let's do that.
Yeah.
That seems really cool.
Yeah. So your big push was mainly what, YouTube, Facebook? Like, what were your big focuses, and have they changed?
Yeah. So our story is unlike most others. I don't know many that have, just because of, like I said, the time that we started.
Right.
So we started on Instagram. We then started a blog. We then went to YouTube, and then everything else as it came along. And Facebook was probably about the same time as the blog, but we didn't really work on that. So what that's led us to is like a really interesting. So we're like really good with SEO, and because like search engine optimization, for those who don't know what that is, and so trying to get views there, which drives into ad revenue, which also drives into plan sales and things, and bringing them in. So that's like, as we started the push, like I said, it was sponsored. So it was Instagram was like our big earner for a while.
Yeah. Then
we built up, and the blog. And then when we built up YouTube and started growing that, so like 2017, 2018, that one really started coming when our growth trajectory started really taking off. We had a couple big hits in 2018. And so that was our main focus for a while. But like, I like to be very diversified. So, I mean, we've counted them. I've got like, I don't know, 12 or 15 different revenue streams. Yeah. Just of like, because there's so many different ways to skin the cat. And a lot of them are, as I talk about, like revenue streams are like going out in the rain with a bunch of buckets, right? And some buckets are small, right? Like merch sales, merch sales are, very small. And some buckets are huge, like sponsors and YouTube ad revenue. But you put them all out there, and then when you combine them all together, you're like, oh, yeah, like YouTube was awesome and sponsors are great, but man, like, the affiliate and the product sales and the merch, like those all add up. And so it's like, and even just like the little affiliate stuff. So that's one of those things. It's like, as you keep collecting, we try to stay broad because it does all add up. And it's like, you think like, it's like, we got, we sold $50 or we made $50 profit on selling some shirts this month. It'd be like, well, yeah. And that like pays for my gas for a week, or right. It's like all these little things. I love thinking about it that way of like, oh, this just paid for this just paid for that. But right now our main focus is YouTube. And as we go where the money goes, right? So that's we were getting a ton of sponsorships of things on Instagram starting out. When we got into YouTube, the ad revenue there is way better, or, you know, it exists.
Right.
But then Facebook started making us good money, and so we switched over. So we put a lot of effort on Facebook as well. But YouTube is still definitely our top income source.
Yeah. So how has the meta change affected that portfolio? So just going hard on YouTube then at this point?
Not much actually, because so just for a little insight, we didn't get invited.
Save some juice for the after show.
Yeah. So the meta, so as they just, like this last couple of weeks, cut off Reels for both Facebook and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it was a while back where they, you know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, where they cut the Instagram Reels bonus like in half, basically, or not even half. It was like a factor of 8 or something. Yeah. Oh, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, whatever. That was fun while it lasted. But Facebook, we were never invited to the Really Good program. And so our money that came from Facebook was always in the ad stream revenue. And that hasn't really changed. So we're still hitting heavy on Facebook. It's just not on Reels.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But it's, you know, all that stuff, it changes with the wind, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it's great. It was awesome a while ago. It's still good now. Might go away tomorrow, right? So we're trying to bring more stuff in-house, like digital plans. Also mentioned the courses. So trying to bring things in that we own, so that if something happens and they shut down Amazon affiliates or whatever, then I'll share that story on the after show.
There you
Amazon affiliate fiasco.
Yeah.
If they shut that down, you know, you just lose that money. Like, you can't do anything about it. You're playing in their sandbox, right? And so we're trying to build our own sandbox and invite people to come play in it, versus like meeting our friends at Facebook sandbox or Amazon sandbox.
Right. Yeah. I listened to a couple guys, Colin and Samir, and they talk a lot about, they're bringing back something that was heavy in the 90s, which is a newsletter.
Yeah.
So the newsletter is like, I guess, a way of putting the blog into your inbox, essentially.
Yep.
And so I think that's going to start making a comeback. We've been doing it. We don't do it as much as we should. We basically do it as like a feed, an RSS feed, if you're ancient like me, where basically when we do a project, we'll do a newsletter. We'll say, you know, it's in the email blast, right? And it's like, hey, the new project, but then we have things under there. But every time we send the email out, we'll get plan sales, we'll get hits to the site, all those things. Yeah. And so absolutely, like, email list is so important, because that's like one of the few things that you own. Like, you own those addresses, and even if MailChimp shuts down, right, you can go to somebody else and get another email provider. Like, if you have somebody's email address, you've got direct access, right? You've got access to their inbox, and there are filters. That's a whole nother conversation too, as far as like how to not get caught up in spam and all that good stuff. But, you know, you have a direct line of communication with your audience, with your customers, and that's gold. Right. Yeah. So you came in the game 2015, 2017 time frame. There are guys who were on the scene. You know, you got Mark Spagnolo, you've got Jimmy DeResta, you got Steve Ramsey. So the guys we consider like old school, you know, guys. And then you've got like the newer content creators who are popping up and starting to make a name for themselves. You know, some of them keynote speakers at Workbench Con and things like that.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like in the middle. Like, what if you were to gauge yourself on between the two, where would you say that you're kind of in the middle, or would you?
I'd say that I really like the analogy of like classes, right? It's like, I was in like the class of 2016, right? It's like it's instead of when you graduate, it's like when you started. And so like the OGs, like the real, you know, Mark is obviously like the real OG, but then and then Ramsey was out there really early, but then you have like the Jay Bates, the April Wilkerson, the Dave Picciuto, the Bob Claggett, and those guys, And so those guys were definitely ahead of me, but not that far. But then, like, in my, the class of 2016, it would be like me, like John Malecki, Johnny Brook from Crafted Workshop, Chris Salomone was actually just after me, like Mike Montgomery, Ben Ueda, those guys were just slightly before me. And so, like, you have this group, and I think that, like, you tend to, you form those bonds when you're all, like, just trying to figure it out, and you're, like, small, and then, like, you kind of grow together. And so it's cool and so it's like, you look at a lot of those guys I mentioned, we're kind of all, in the same general vicinity. And so, like, you see those guys coming up, like John from Lincoln Street, or Travis from Shop Nation. Actually, Travis has been around for a long time, but he's growing,
starting to blow up.
Yeah. I love it.
You read into my next question. You already started answering my next question, which so it's good on you for picking up that up. But essentially, what I was going to say is, or ask is, as you kind of see yourself in this niche, do you start gravitating toward a certain style, or you talked early on about how things, others that you watch and you start picking up on their stuff, like how has that kind of influenced what you're doing on your channel and stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's like someone used to tell me, if anybody ever says, "Oh, that's a great question," that means they don't know the answer. But I don't think that's true.
Here, hit my edit button.
Like they're stalling, yeah. But I think your voice and your style, I think, has to change as you grow if you want to be relevant long term. And so that's like, I can't remember what book it was that I was reading. I'm so bad. Like, I have all these things. I'm horrible at, like, citing who it was.
I'm the worst. So you're good with me.
Yeah. But they was talking about, I think it may have been Story Brand, actually, by Dan Miller. But it was talking about Madonna and how Madonna has been around, since the 80s, right? Yeah,
she definitely morphed.
Right. And it's because every decade she reinvented herself. And it was almost like clockwork, like every decade she reinvented herself. And you see, other musicians who just kind of do the same thing and then they just go away. Taylor Swift is a great example of that as well, going from country to pop to, business mogul and all that good stuff. But, like, I think in YouTube land and content creation, it's the same thing. Like, most people start wanting to do instructional DIY. And that's what I started, right? I'm like, I want to do instructional DIY because, like, my three main people who I was like, ooh, I want to emulate what they're doing was Jay Bates, Mark Spagnolo, and Bob Claggett. Right. So I was like,
three. That's like,
it was a great three. Yeah, exactly. And it was early on. And so I was like, I love how these dudes, like, they teach, and they, like, Mark was always had a little bit of humor. Jay and Bob, not so much. In the beginning, but
now Mark's going to dirty old man humor.
Oh yeah,
like,
he's
like the rest of us.
He's always done that. Yeah. But then, like, you start teaching and showing, and then you're just like, what you realize is that if you're just giving how-to content, instructional, you're just a commodity. Because anybody can teach you to do that. And, like, when people are coming to you, they're coming for, like, how to build a cutting board, right? And they're going to watch 5 or 10 different videos on how to make a cutting board. And after they've watched those 10 videos, you can say, hey, who was that third guy you watched? And they'd be like, I have no idea, right? Was he the one with the right? They're like, oh, and that's, like, it used to just show, like, my hands mostly. Like, it was, like, all tight shots, and I didn't ever talk on screen. And so then I was like, well, to get a real bond with the audience, to get people to buy into not just the channel, but to me as a personality, like, you've got to have a conversation with them. So that's when I started talking. So when I started doing voiceovers with humor, like, instead of just like, first I cut this board to 3 feet, then I cut, I screwed together. Like, it was all very, very dry and instructional. Then I was like, okay, I gotta, I want people to, like, have a laugh, start throwing in some dad jokes and stuff and showing some personality. And then morphed again to, now I don't even do voiceovers. It's all on camera.
Right.
for a few different reasons, but because it's way easier for the editing process between me and the editor. He doesn't have to wait for me to write a voiceover.
Right.
But it's also just like, so it's more like people just hanging out with me, and I'm like having a good time in the shop and trying to bring people along with me. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think it definitely morphs, and I think as you go, so it's interesting to see the new people and like how, I think that's where everybody wants to start. But if you see the people that really take off, and people are always like, well, why did this girl grow so much so fast? It's because they started off with like that little something. Like Jason Hibbs is always a great example, right? Because Jason Hibbs, like just leaned in heavy to like just being a complete goofball and humor, along with like great woodworking. And nobody had really done that formula the way he was doing it. And so he stood out and was making good content. So he took off.
Now people are ripping it off.
Yeah, I mean that's any great thing, right? Yeah. He ripped it off from somebody else, right? He didn't invent it. At least maybe he was the first to do woodworking, but he's not the first guy to be funny, right?
Right.
So it's like there's nothing new under the sun, and everybody's gonna steal your stuff. I mean, like the amount of thumbnails I get stolen is just ridiculous. But the great part is like I probably stole them from somebody else. Like I'm like, oh, that looks like a great idea. So I'm like, the automotive industry, and I use it on one of my thumbnails.
Yeah.
So I think that I gravitate more now to that personality driven, because there are a few things that I still will, like try to watch, but I'm not going to watch somebody build a coffee table. Right. Right. Like, but if they're like, yo, I got a coffee table that, shoots rockets out of it. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm like, let me go. Like,
let me jot down that idea.
That was a good, no, I got that one. I got dibs. So I love like Colin Furs, Mark Rober, Stuff Made Here, DIY Perks. Like those are the dudes who I love watching as like makers. I don't like go and watch, like I don't watch Mark stuff or Jay stuff anymore.
Right.
I watch a lot of Bob stuff because he did a lot of the electronics. And so, and I'm still I'm very interested in that, but like hardcore woodworking, I hardly ever watch any of that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause you probably used to watch it for the, education part of it.
Yeah.
So now it would be just for the entertainment part, and
exactly. And when if they're not entertaining,
limited, then
right, right. It's like, well, and not that those guys aren't funny, but
right? No.
It's like, well, if you could see something that you're interested in and like get that personality and stuff, and I mean that's what I'm way more interested. Like I'm like going heavy into digital manufacturing, so CNCs, laser, 3D printing.
Right.
Like I love that stuff. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time watching and Arduino programming, those kind of things these days.
Oh yeah. I'm sure your wife loves you just watching that stuff. She's like, oh my God, it's boring stuff.
Yeah. We watch YouTube a few times a week as a family together. And that's like Dude Perfect, How Ridiculous, Paul Infinity. Have you seen them?
No.
Oh, they're like these Finnish guys from Finland.
Oh, wow.
Who they play ping pong. They're like hilarious. I know the kids love it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my kids are 12 and 8, so.
Oh, they'd love it. Yeah, my kids are 14, 12, and 11.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Check it out. They're like really funny, and it's like they're doing they're doing all these like trick shots and crazy things. But yeah, that's the stuff that we watch together as a family, and I'll pull them into like a Hacksmith or a Colin Furs every once in a while, but they really love like the like the big spectacle kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot to a couple guys, Drew Witt and Suman Sarkar, just about a lot of what you just said. Essentially, is bringing out the personality. And I'll tell you one person who has really been challenging me, even just the last week. I was like, oh, here's a video idea, and Suman will be like, that's a horrible idea. And here's 16 reasons why. And he's like, he really is challenging me just in the last week about what is your brand, and whatever video you do should be filtered around, through that brand. And like, I've established my avatar, but then he's even challenged, okay, how much does that avatar make? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And so, like, just really going deep into the weeds, do you have somebody that's in mind for your channel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dave. Dave's our avatar.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Dave's 35. Well, Dave's really 35 to 45, but he's 35.
Yeah.
It's like 25 to 45. Like all of our people are kind of in there, so we go with 35. He's got 2 kids. He's got a dog. And he's got a corporate day job. He makes about $80,000 a year, and he wants to get away from the day job and do woodworking.
You just described my avatar.
Yeah, I mean that's everybody. That's every corporate America woodworker. So it's not.
All you have to do is take a dive into your analytics, and you're like, okay, that's
exactly. Like it tells you a lot.
Dave is
of that.
95% male.
That's right. 50% in the U.S.
Yeah, that's right. He most of his time is spent in the U.S. Sometimes he travels to India.
That's right.
Yeah,
and uses subtitles there. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I've not I talked to Suman just for a brief minute at Workbench Con. Hadn't had a chance to really meet with him.
Oh yeah.
But no, he's dead on, because that's like, as you go through and plan your videos and thinking about it, and that's like something that we didn't do a while back, and so then we started doing, like the fix this. So that was always my idea, was that I would be like home repair and woodworking, not realizing that while that's great, and while we've built a great channel around that it also dilutes the brand, because now you've got people who have come for flooring, you've got people who have come for, hidden wireless charging in a desk, and people who have come for shop cabinets, and people who have come for, whatever, like building a fire pit out in the backyard.
Right.
And those could all be different people. And so when that person that is just trying to fix up their house and really doesn't want to do woodworking, but they want to do floors, they're not going to give a rip when I do a shop project, right? And so it's like automatically I've lost that group.
Right.
Well, people are what's going on out there?
I was wondering if it was my kids.
No, yeah. So that there's definitely a beauty to narrowing down and having a niche. But at the same time, that and it was also very thoughtful in the sense that I think when you look at those people who are just hardcore woodworking and don't do anything else, there's a cap, because you can only grow so much, because it's more narrow. And so that's what we started out. That's what we were like, and that's why we've done, that's why we do so much stuff with like pocket holes, because it's like the easily attainable. Our channel was never supposed to be about my journey in woodworking.
Yeah.
Our channel was to educate, inspire, and entertain an audience. And so sometimes a lot of times I'll do things that maybe I wouldn't do, but that I know the audience would do. Right. Or I'll stay in a spot. Like, it's like, oh, Brad, you've been making videos for 7 years, and why are you still using pocket holes? It's like, well, because this isn't about me. This is about teaching and pulling stuff in and trying to bring people along. But at the same time, you got to keep that the mouth of the funnel as wide as you can if you want to grow, past a certain point.
Yeah. Drew Witt was on, and he said he got it from somebody else, but he said, make videos for people. And I was like, well, duh. I didn't even, I'm sitting here trying to hit a metric or hit an algorithm. And instead of making a video that somebody's gonna, actually want to click on, because you're not, right. It's not serving it up to
that's how robots. I got a good one. I got a good one for you. Is that anytime you hear the word algorithm, cross that out and put in audience.
Yeah,
because that's what it is. It's like, when people are like, "Oh, the algorithm hates me," I'm like, yeah. No, you just make crappy content.
Yeah, I just saw a Reddit post on that today. The guy was going off on the algorithm, and it's like everybody, 30 comments underneath it. It was like, no, you're wrong.
Right. Yeah, because that's what it is. I mean, like, yes, the algorithm is a thing, and yes, it can do weird things. But in general, if you're putting out content that people want to watch, whatever algorithm it is, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, whoever, if that's great content that people want to watch, they're going to serve it to more people because they want people on the platform.
Right.
Right. Like it's not like the man trying to hold you down.
Yeah.
It's you competing against other people for an audience's attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They want to serve up ads, so they want you to stay for longer. And if your video is not keeping somebody around, then they're going to exit the platform. And that's the opposite of what they want. So, yeah.
You do not want to be a session ender.
Yeah. Yeah. On that one post, he was like, my click-through rate's 10%, and all of a sudden it just flatlined. And it's like, well, you're obviously really good at title and thumbnail, but are you good at, delivery? How's the video? Like, you didn't talk about retention time, your AVD or anything.
Yeah. Oh, all those good things.
Yeah. Well, I want to save some stuff for the after show, so we'll go over there to that after show. We've been going for.
Is this like a patron only after show?
It's a patron only. Yeah.
Sign up for the patron for the Vulgar Woodworking Patreon, or I guess it'd be the Maker Lounge Patreon.
Yeah.
So you can hear my story about how I strangled a bear.
Ooh.
No, I don't know. Just trying to do something juicy.
Yeah, this is a good teaser. Now you have to make something up. You have about 10 seconds while I read out the patrons. So thank you to our Rockstar patrons. We've got Jimmy McAnally, Artigiano Serio, Wimm Design, Calvary Customs LLC, Cleancut Woodworking, Bailey Thompson, Dave Garcia, Broken Lead Woodworks, Starks Lagoon, Sawyer Design, Kodama Design, Dylan Furniture, and Shock the Fox. So head over to patreon.com/Maker Lounge Podcast if you want to hear that bear strangling story or talk about the affiliate fiasco. And thank you also to Surf Prep for sponsoring today's episode. Thanks for being here, Brad.
Awesome, man. Enjoyed it.